I was sitting at my desk, staring at the pile of unfinished work when my phone buzzed. Absent-mindedly, I picked it up, thinking it was just another message from a colleague. But my heart stopped when I saw Mark's name flash on the screen. I hesitated, then opened the message. It was just a few cold, heartless words. "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. I've taken the money from our account. Don't try to contact me." For a second, I couldn't even breathe. My whole world seemed to collapse right in front of me. We had been together for 12 years. Through ups and downs, through everything. And now, just like that, in a text message, he decided to walk away. Not only did he take everything we built, but he emptied our joint account too. Every penny I had worked for, gone in the blink of an eye. I stared at my phone, trying to process it. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. How could he do this to me? Why did he do this to me? There was no warning, no argument, nothing. He was just gone. And the worst part, he didn't even have the decency to face me. He chose to leave me with nothing, no closure, no explanation, just silence. I felt the betrayal burn through me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the life we had built together, the promises we made, the trust I thought we had. And now it was all shattered, like it meant nothing to him. But as the pain turned to anger, one thing became clear. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Mark wasted no time moving on. Within weeks, his social media was flooded with pictures of his new life, his new partner, a younger woman, of course, smiling beside him in fancy restaurants, on luxury vacations in expensive cars. It was as if our 12 years together had meant nothing. He acted like I was just a chapter he had closed, a burden lifted from his shoulders. I couldn't help but feel sick every time I saw one of those posts, but I couldn't stop myself from looking. It was all so effortless for him. He didn't seem to have a single ounce of regret. Instead, he flaunted this perfect new life, full of lavish dinners and weekend getaways. He smiled in every picture, showing off how happy he was, as if trading me in for someone else was the best decision he ever made. And that's what hurt the most. How easily he moved on, how he paraded his happiness while I was left picking up the pieces. But what he didn't know was that I was watching closely. Every post, every tagged location, every new friend he added. I saw it all. I didn't just scroll through mindlessly, I studied. I started gathering little details here and there, small things most people wouldn't notice. His new partner's name, where she worked, where they liked to go. Mark had always been careless with his privacy, and that hadn't changed. He was too caught up in his perfect new world to realize how much information he was giving away. The more I saw, the more I knew that this new life of his wasn't as perfect as he wanted people to believe. Behind those carefully curated photos was the same old Mark, selfish, arrogant, always looking for the next shiny thing. His wealth, his so-called success, was built on shaky foundations, and I knew exactly where his weak points were. He thought he had it all figured out, that leaving me was his ticket to a better life. He thought I was just sitting there watching, helpless. But what he didn't realize was that I wasn't just watching, I was planning. I knew his secrets, his vulnerabilities. I knew how to make him fall. And when the time was right, I would make sure he felt every bit of the betrayal he had dealt me. It wasn't long before I realized I couldn't do this alone. I had the anger, the drive, and the knowledge of Mark's weaknesses, but I needed help. That's when I thought of Rachel. We hadn't spoken in years, but I knew she had gone through something similar. She had been hurt, betrayed by a man who abused his power over her, and she didn't take it lightly. Last I heard, she had found her own way of getting back at him, though I never knew the details. I decided to reach out. I wasn't sure if she'd even want to hear from me after all this time, but when I explained my situation, Rachel was all in. She was furious for me, ready to help before I could even ask. And that's when she told me about her new skills. Rachel had become an expert in the digital world, a hacker with a personal vendetta against men like Mark. She knew how to dig up dirt, how to get into places they thought were safe, and she was more than happy to use those skills for me. We met up a few times and she taught me things I never thought I'd learn. It was like being introduced to a whole new world. Rachel showed me how to bypass security measures, how to access private accounts without leaving a trace. She explained how easy it was for someone like Mark, who was careless with his privacy, to fall victim to cyber sabotage. Together we came up with a plan. Rachel would help me get into Mark's personal and professional accounts, his finances, his emails, even his business dealings. It was all on the table. We weren't going to just mess with his life. We were going to destroy it from the inside out. The best part? He wouldn't see it coming. I watched as Rachel worked her magic, effortlessly breaking through layers of security Mark thought would protect him. And with every password cracked, with every account accessed, I felt a strange sense of power growing inside me. Mark had taken everything from me, but now I had the tools to take it all back. And more. Rachel and I were a perfect team. Her skills and my knowledge of Mark's life were all we needed to pull this off. The game had changed, and I was no longer the victim. Now I was the one in control. The moment Rachel and I gained access to Mark's financial accounts, the real work began. It wasn't enough to just ruin him. I wanted to do it slowly, to make him feel the fear and uncertainty he had forced me to live with. We started by making small, strategic changes. Things that seemed legal and innocent on the surface but would eventually lead to chaos. Rachel guided me through it all. She showed me how to transfer funds in a way that wouldn't raise red flags right away. We moved small amounts at first, just enough to make it look like routine transactions. Mark wouldn't notice not until the damage had already been done. And the best part? Every transaction left him a little more in debt, a little more vulnerable. Once we were comfortable with the flow, we started targeting his business investments. Mark had always prided himself on his brilliant business sense, but I knew better. Most of his success came from dumb luck, not actual skill. Rachel helped me find his weakest points, those risky investments he thought would pay off big. We carefully pulled the strings, making subtle changes that would set off a chain reaction. Slowly but surely, his investments began to crumble. Mark had no idea what was happening. At first, it was just a few missed payments, maybe a minor loss here and there. But as time went on, things started to spiral. He began to notice money disappearing from his accounts, deals falling through, and business partners backing out. The panic was clear on his social media posts. The once smug man who flaunted his wealth now looked desperate, trying to figure out where it was all going wrong. He became paranoid. I could see it in his face during the rare moments he was tagged in photos. The confident, carefree Mark often once knew was crumbling under the weight of his collapsing empire. Every day, more cracks appeared in the perfect life he had so proudly displayed. And I watched it all unfold, knowing I was the one behind it. He didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The life he thought was untouchable was slowly slipping through his fingers, and soon enough, there would be nothing left for him to hold on to. Watching Mark's life fall apart financially was satisfying, but I wasn't done. It wasn't enough for him to lose his money. I wanted him to feel the same confusion and fear he had caused me. So I took things to the next level. It was time to mess with his mind. I started small. At first, I sent him anonymous messages, cryptic, subtle things that would make him wonder. "You know what you did?" Or, "The truth will come out soon." Simple words, but they would keep him up at night, wondering who was behind it. Was it a business rival? Someone from his past? He had no idea it was me. Then, I got more creative. With Rachel's help, I created fake profiles. People who didn't exist but looked real enough on social media. I made them just believable enough to draw Mark in. Some were old friends from his past, reaching out to remind him of things he would rather forget. Others were strangers who seemed to know way too much about his personal life. These fake people started interacting with him, leaving comments, liking his posts, sending him private messages that made him question everything. Mark's paranoia grew. He started acting more erratic, trying to figure out who was behind these strange messages and fake profiles. He couldn't escape it. Every time he opened his phone, there was something new. Another cryptic message, another fake person who seemed to know too much. And his new relationship? That was just as fragile as I thought. The pressure was too much for them. His new partner started questioning him, accusing him of hiding things. I made sure to send her messages too, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. She began to wonder if Mark was keeping secrets from her, and the tension between them grew. I watched from a distance as their perfect relationship started to crack. Mark was losing control not just of his finances, but of his entire life. He was spiraling, trapped in a web of confusion and paranoia. He couldn't trust anyone, not even the woman he left me for. And that's exactly what I wanted. The man who thought he had everything was now afraid of losing it all. He had no idea how much worse things were about to get. Once I had Mark trapped in his own paranoia, it was time for the final blow. Public humiliation. It wasn't enough for him to lose his money or question his sanity. I wanted him to lose the one thing he valued more than anything else, his reputation. Mark had always cared about appearances. He loved being the successful, charming guy who had it all. But I knew the truth, and I was ready to expose it. The first step was to gather the right information. Thanks to Rachel, I already had access to all of Mark's personal and professional accounts. I knew about the shady business deals he'd been involved in, the money he funneled through back channels, and the infidelities he thought he could keep hidden. I had the evidence, screenshots, emails, financial records, all of it. It was just a matter of timing. I started by leaking small bits of information. Nothing too big at first, just enough to raise suspicion. Anonymous tips were sent to local gossip sites, suggesting that Mark wasn't the man he pretended to be. Rumours started circulating, and people in his social circle began to talk. It was subtle at first, but I could see it working. Mark was trying desperately to keep it together, but the cracks were showing. Then, I went bigger. I sent an anonymous tip to a popular news blog, complete with proof of Mark's infidelities. Photos, messages, even receipts from the fancy dinners he took his new lover to. Everything was laid out for the world to see. It wasn't long before the story went viral. Mark was exposed as a cheater and his new partner. She was caught in the crossfire. Their picture-perfect relationship was shattered in front of everyone. But I didn't stop there. I had the dirt on his business too. I leaked documents showing how he'd been involved in shady deals, screwing over his partners and breaking the law. His business associates started backing away, wanting nothing to do with him as the scandal grew. Investors pulled out, deals fell through, and Mark's entire professional life started to collapse. The media had a field day. Mark became the subject of every gossip article and news story for weeks. The man who had once been admired for his success and charm was now a laughingstock. His social standing was destroyed. He couldn't go anywhere without people whispering about him, judging him for his lies, his cheating, and his shady business. I watched it all unfold from a distance, and I have to admit, it was satisfying. Mark had always been so concerned with how others saw him, and now his reputation was in ruins. The friends he thought were loyal, they turned their backs on him. The business deals he thought were foolproof, they crumbled. His entire world fell apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Mark became an outcast, rejected by the very people he had once tried so hard to impress. And me? I walked away from the mess I'd created, finally free from the man who had tried to destroy my life. The difference was, I had survived. He, on the other hand, was left with nothing. Mark thought he could handle anything. For a while he believed he could fix the damage, maybe even bounce back. But as everything fell apart, his finances, his reputation, his shiny new relationship, he grew desperate. The man who once strutted through life, thinking he was untouchable, was now scrambling, grasping at anything that could save him. And when there was nothing left, no one to turn to, he did the one thing I never expected. He called me. I stared at my phone when his name popped up. It was surreal, almost laughable. Mark, the man who had abandoned me, who had left me with nothing, was now the one begging. He tried to sound calm at first, pretending this was just a simple conversation between us like old times, but I could hear the panic in his voice. He was unraveling. "Sarah," he said, "I know what's been happening. I don't know how, but I know you're behind this. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. I'm sorry, okay? Just stop this." I couldn't help but smile. He still didn't get it. He thought this was all about the divorce, about the money he stole, or the humiliation he'd caused me. He had no idea. So I let him talk. I let him plead, apologize, beg. I let him grovel because for once, he was the one who needed me. When he finally ran out of excuses and fell silent, I spoke. "Mark," I said, "this isn't just about the divorce. You think I'm doing this because you left me because you took our money and humiliated me? Number, this is for everything. For every time you made me feel small. For every time you manipulated me, controlled me, twisted my words until I didn't even recognize myself. This is for the years I spent trying to be good enough for you, while you chipped away at my confidence, my happiness, my life." I could hear him breathing on the other end, but he didn't say a word. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Mark had always been good at playing the perfect husband in public, but behind closed doors he was a master of emotional manipulation. It wasn't physical abuse, no. It was more subtle than that. The constant criticism, the gaslighting, the way he made me doubt myself at every turn. He made me feel like I was always the problem, that I wasn't smart enough, pretty enough, or strong enough. "You thought you could just walk away," I continued, "that you could throw me away like I was nothing. But you were wrong, Mark. You underestimated me." He tried to interrupt, to plead again, but I cut him off. "You're desperate now, I get it. Your life is in ruins and you want me to stop. But here's the thing, Mark. I'm done listening to you. You don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to decide when this ends. You took everything from me and now it's your turn to lose." He didn't say anything after that. He just hung up, defeated and broken. And I was finally free. I can still remember the look on Mark's face when he thought he had everything figured out. He believed that by divorcing me and draining our bank account, he'd stripped me of everything. He thought I'd crumble, that I'd be nothing without him. But the truth, he had no idea who I really was or what I'd been doing all these years. While he was out playing the perfect husband, parading around with his business deals and flaunting his new life, I had been quietly preparing my escape. Every time he belittled me or made me feel small, I had been building something. He never saw it coming. He thought I was just his obedient wife, the one who needed him for everything. But that was never the truth. The money he took from our joint account, it didn't matter. I hadn't been relying on it for years. I had been investing in myself, building my own wealth and resources behind the scenes. I didn't need him to make me who I was. He had always treated me like I was nothing more than a supporting character in his life story. But the joke was on him, because I had been writing my own story all along. It wasn't just about the money, it was about independence. The divorce text, the one he thought would break me, was nothing more than the final push I needed. It forced me to stop relying on his control, on his approval, and to stand up for myself. That's when I realized something. I didn't need him to be successful. I didn't need his approval to be happy. The moment he sent that text, he handed me the freedom I had been waiting for. I had been investing in businesses, learning new skills and connecting with the right people. I had built my own network, my own safety net. So when Mark thought he had ruined me, I was already a step ahead. He had been too busy thinking I was weak to notice that I had already created a life for myself. I had enough resources to not only take care of myself, but to thrive without him. I didn't just want revenge, I wanted liberation. I wanted to show Mark that I could rise above the destruction he tried to bring into my life. I wanted to show him that I could survive without him. And more than that, I could thrive without him. He thought he was the one who held all the power, but in the end, I was the one who had control all along. When Mark finally realized what I had done, it was too late. His world had crumbled, and mine had only grown stronger. He thought he could destroy me, but instead he freed me. And now, as I look back, I realize that the greatest revenge wasn't in the things I took from him. It was in the life I built for myself. I walked away not just with freedom, but with strength, independence, and the satisfaction of knowing that in the end, I didn't need him at all.